Welcome back to episode number 20, lucky number 20 of Virginia is for Conspiracy Lovers. Tonight I'm super stoked. We've got I was just telling them one of my Mount Rushmore picks, dream guests, not to kiss his butt too much, but William Ramsey of William Ramsey Investigates. And we were just talking about Court Lindahl, and I was just about to kiss his butt a little bit, but I said, let me press record and get it on the record. But no, between you and Court Lindahl, the reason that I decided that I wanted to do a podcast was because I tell everybody that I kind of collect conspiracy theories and hidden history like comic books. Like I'll entertain any and all of them. I love them. I'd rather listen to a good conspiracy theory that I don't buy at all than some of the entertainment that's kind of out there. And then I have the ones that I do truly believe and are like super near and dear to my heart. But there for a while, like conspiracy podcasting got so deep into the Tartaria and these things that are almost unprovable. And I don't know. My stuff is more based in like kind of the hidden history that you can read old parchments about and whatnot. And it just between you and Court, the with your background in law and his in archaeology, I saw um you guys as being grounded enough to where you can actually take a measured, serious kind of academic approach to some of these things. And while you'll like dip your toe in the woo, you don't dive head first like some of these guys, man. The weirder the better, and
Yeah, no, they're like the weirdest
unfortunately,
stories possible. Yeah.
yeah, unfortunately, it just kind of discredits some of the other really good like guests and personal research that they do, and it's like a bummer. You go from like a legitimate like Clinton body count episode to like a flat Earth episode. You're like, bro, yeah, but you're man. I don't know, man. I don't want to talk bad about
It is
anybody, but
important. What you're saying is important because it is something that all the hosts like me have done. Like I've done 1,500 shows. I had somebody recommend a guest. This is actually happening today. And so
yeah,
I interviewed them and I said, I don't believe this person. So I put their stuff on my Patreon and told people who follow my Patreon, what do you think? And everybody
yeah,
said it's like conspiracy smack, is what I call it. Like they
yeah,
know the terms and the things that people know. They know what's out there in the zeitgeist in the kind of alt media, but they don't have any details. They don't have specifics. They don't have
right,
something that can be third party verified. So not me,
right,
the listener, not them, but something like I know that guy. I saw him at this party. Like you can say Jufrey stories baloney, but we've seen pictures of her with
right,
Epstein and international models, and you can go, she was there. Like we
yeah,
know it. But so this other person then there's a further thing where they expect it to be published whether you believe them or not. So then they're pissed, like, oh, so it because it comes back on them. So I'm going, I go, there's a couple interviews that I've done that haven't made it to like, I'm not going to promote it because I don't
yeah,
believe you. And it's
yeah,
actually, it's part of my job is to kind of stay credible and have integrity to myself and my listeners, but also
yeah,
the person who promoted that shouldn't, they should have said, this person, I
yeah,
can't validate or verify this stuff. I remember there's people in this community who have done that. One guy who comes to mind is Max Spears, who was good at it. He kind of could just, talk the talk and walk the walk, but he died of a drug overdose. He OD'd on Xanax, and everybody said, "Oh, this is a mysterious death." No, he was a drug user. Like he was a
yeah.
pharmaceutical drug user.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, that so like just and we don't have to stick on this for super long, but I love your work on Crowley. He's always been somebody who has, you know, scared slash interested in me as, coming from a Christian worldview. He's kind of like that other side guy that I've always wanted to like look into. But one, you either look into the Crowley, the people putting information out about him are either, the Crowley groupies
Right.
or completely off the rails. And then for someone like you that takes like a serious studious approach to this guy and not like glorify. I mean, I always tell people, people will bring up to me, they're like, oh, you're into conspiracies. Crowley was a cool guy, Jimmy Page and like the whole thing. And I'm like, that dude diddled kids and he ate poop. Period. He wasn't, I mean, he was interesting for sure, but he is a creep. He was like, let's be honest about it, man. Like, I know
Branded
it's a pop
people, drank
culture
blood,
figure. Like, I mean,
all that stuff. Yeah.
yeah.
So
So yeah. So that's, I guess, enough butt kissing. But yeah. And one other thing I'll say, like my personal research it goes deep into, Freemasons and like the Plantagenets and the Merovingian line and stuff like that. And those three terms right there have been so every ill and evil in the entire world has been either accredited to them or like overblown so much that like it it's so old hat. When you hear those, you almost turn off. You're like, oh, that's 2004 conspiracy stuff right there. Like, you know what I mean? We've all seen Bill Cooper. It's like, yeah, I know everybody has, beat it over the head for so many years, but there's still really interesting ties in there, you know what I mean? But yeah. So anyway, I appreciate you being on, and tonight we're going to talk about I could talk about anything to you, but Vince Foster, because we are Virginia is for conspiracy lovers, and like I always say on here, Virginia really is it's a strange nexus point of everything that is conspiracy and true crime and hidden history. I mean, we've got everything from modern day data collection sites like today all the way back to the very beginning of this country, 1607, the whole John Smith Pocahontas kick that I research. And so we try to shoehorn the guests that we really, really want in here by finding some connection to Virginia. But of course, you spent time living in Virginia and working around the DC area, and you have great knowledge on, a very early Clinton body count. So I'm gonna let you take it away and just, it's
one of the
probably
first count. It was July 20th, 1993. His body was discovered at Fort Marcy Park in Northern Virginia. So this is the epicenter, and the story has never really ended. Everybody knows the story of Vince Foster. Whenever
right.
they mention the body count, it's the first name that comes up. He was dead within 6 months of that first administration of the Clintons. So he haunted the Clintons till
Right.
to this day. So it's a very important. He was their I think he was the chief of staff or an attorney or their head attorney. I can't
He
remember
was
what
the chief. I was brushing up on him a little bit today. He was the chief White House counsel.
counsel, right?
But they also like had him do stuff that like I guess they wouldn't usually have him do. Like I was reading some accounts in his own words where he was talking about like he was kind of vetting different administration people coming in and being like I don't feel comfortable with this like kind of thing. I didn't know that they were childhood friends either.
There's a
Like
picture of them in elementary school together.
kindergarten. They went to
Yeah,
kindergarten
yeah.
together. Weird.
He's a remarkable guy. Tall guy, Davidson, first of his class at University of Arkansas Law School. Um, I mean, the story of Clinton is actually pretty mysterious as well. It's quite the
Mm,
story, but they are together all the way into the White House. And he seemed to be a little too honest for these guys. You have the Whitewater as a cover. Like that's like the story of why he got aced, or the story is he's committed suicide out of depression.
right.
But um, there was so much going on in Arkansas at that time: drug running, Mena, Bobby Seale, or Barry
Barry
Seal,
Seal.
excuse me.
Yep.
It's just a known figure. there's all Lassiter, all these guys who are surrounding, or a lot of friends of Clinton were involved. That was the biggest kind of business because it was not taxed. It was
Yeah.
underground and they had to launder money. So here he is at the Rose Law Firm, and he's got to launder money, and I mean he's in that environment. And there, he might have just like there was. I've talked to a guy who's written a book about the killing of Vince Foster, who's also
Okay.
a Davidson College graduate. His name is David Martin. So check out that book and the interviews
Yeah.
I've done on William Ramsey Investigates. But there was a meeting a week before he turned up dead, and it was out. I think it was at like the Getaway. What's the Getaway they always go to? Were in the White House. Anyway, he like apparently that was kind of the final talk they gave him.
Was it Camp David?
Camp David, yeah, I think
Yeah.
they were at Camp David. So I think that the Bill Clinton has a lot of underground kind of connections, much more than you would think. I think some of these other, I mean, I think Trump probably does too, but he had to
Is
work
there
for the
any
mafia.
is there any truth to the kind of rags to riches Rhodes Scholar thing? Was he really? You find a lot of time. Like I grew up in Virginia, and I grew up in Williamsburg, but I grew up on the other side of the tracks in kind of rural Williamsburg, and so like rural South is a whole different kind of poor when you're talking rags to riches. And I do hear a lot with this. Every now and then you'll hear somebody talk about some rags to riches story, some guy who came from dirt, from nothing, and then got all the way up in politics or media or whatever it is. But then you find out that they were like upper middle class for the most part. But and
They
so
all
I'm
tell that
curious.
story, just like AOC.
Yeah,
She went
yeah,
to good schools and everything like that, but
yeah.
it's
Dirt
part of the
poor,
fun. Yeah,
just I'm like, I don't.
it's a democratic trope. Is a
Yeah,
lot of these guys try working class. There's stories of like Hillary Clinton, like my dad was just a nice little window dresser and he
yeah,
made drapes, and it's just like completely she lived in like $1 million house in Chicago and her dad's associated with
right.
a mob.
Yeah,
So
and
it's like, come on, give me a
and
break.
it was like a textile like company or something like
Yeah, I
that.
mean
Like
it's probably
massive,
a
yeah.
front for something,
Right.
she just tells these BS stories.
And so Vince Foster, he gets
Let
in.
me answer your
Yeah,
question
yeah,
for
no,
the
okay, go
Clinton
ahead.
question. Is there truth to that? No. There's
No.
something strange about Clinton from the very beginning. His name was Blythe. That was supposedly the name that he was given of his real dad. But people have looked into his real dad, who died in a ditch of all things. That supposed real dad, Blythe, and the timing of when his Blythe was in Europe doesn't coincide with conceiving a fetus inside of a woman 9 months earlier. So he could not have been there at
So
the
he died
time.
in the UK?
No, he died in the
Oh,
States, but he was a
he,
military guy.
oh,
So
okay.
Blythe was stationed in Italy, is my understanding. And the timing couldn't have been when Bill was born. He couldn't have been in the States. He was overseas. So that is just a cover. So I think they found a guy who died and just said,
Mm,
"You're Blythe now," because it's convenient because he's dead. He can't confirm anything. The rumor is that he's the Rockefellers' illegitimate son, which would make more sense
yeah.
considering how because the Rockefellers, there were five boys. It was Lawrence, David,
Hmm.
Nelson, and then there was kind of like this other one who was a hard partying, womanizing, may not have been the smartest one. Like I think David was the
Kind
quiet,
of the
smart
black
one.
sheep. Yeah.
Yeah. And Nelson was kind of like the gregarious extrovert. And this guy was kind
Yeah.
of like the guy who liked to hang out in floozy bars and hang out with, Little Rock back in those days in the 40s and 50s was a mob hangout and also
Yeah, that was kind of that hub
Southern
for
Dixie kind of stuff. So
yep.
and Arkansas has it's a little flexible,
Oh
morally
yeah.
maybe more it's not Utah is probably so I think
Yeah.
I forgot was Winston Church Rockefeller. I can't remember his first name offhand. He looks like Bill Clinton.
Really.
So that would make more sense.
I
Yeah.
That's the first I've heard of that. And
Yeah.
the Rockefellers play hugely into my research because of coming in
If
swooping
you if
into
you look at a lot of these guys who are brought up, there's a Rockefeller or Bush connection, like
yeah.
Obama's a cousin of the Bushes and clearly is involved in intel. His mom and his uncle in Indonesia are like part of the deep state there. Like there's
Right.
no question about it.
Well,
And
and wasn't there the period after Reagan was elected where like you had the era of like the Rockefeller Republicans, and then when Reagan got in, it almost like flipped, and they all kind of gravitated more Democrat. I've heard somebody talk about that where like you had what was called the Rockefeller Republicans, and it was like this Northeast Connecticut
right,
like
right, yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
Republican push. But then when this kind of supposed outsider of Reagan got elected, it's almost like they were butthurt. And you can I've listened to somebody break down and show where literally these Rockefeller or these Rockefeller Republican like senators and congressmen and people who were on the move up had R's next to their names for years in politics. And then you can see the delineation of right around the Reagan era when all of a sudden they all switch to the other side of the aisle. And which you saying a possibility of Clinton being a Southern man, um, you know, Democrat who may be the illegitimate son of a Rockefeller, I could see how,
It makes
it's
more
almost
sense.
perfect
How
timing.
you how his mother is known to be a bartender. She's like a somebody who serves drinks in a bar.
Yeah,
Like she has no resources. You can see pictures of her. She's
yeah.
not sophisticated. Maybe she was good looking when she was younger, but she is not come from. She is what it could in a not white, like lower
Poor
class
white
white.
trash.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so, how does this guy, smart, gregarious, how does he get from Arkansas to like Little Rock all the way to Georgetown into Yale Law School? And
Rhodes
then
Scholar. That's
Rhodes Scholar. These
I-
are incredibly, it's just incredibly rarefied. And if you look at other people who were brought up like that, like another example is Robert Hunter Biden. The guy's smart. How does he get into Yale Law School? These are like sinecures, they're like giveaways. This isn't somebody who's getting in on pure talent. And a lot of those
yeah.
Eastern elite schools, they're not. And if you look at even Obama,
Mhm.
not really the brightest guy. Like, I'm sorry, like I know that he has this kind of knighted saint thing. He's not a saint,
Yeah.
he's gay. But I mean, he nobody saw him at Columbia, and then he goes to Harvard Law School and he becomes the editor of the Harvard Law Review. This is a supreme, people would
Yeah,
kill, slit their mom's throat for that job. So how
right.
did he get into that position? I mean, lawyers are very competitive.
Well,
So
and there's just a history of, I mean, and then when you look at his Senate, tenure there, um, where he never voted, he abstained from everything. He specifically really seems like a person that was just kind of
you have to
placed into the
compare him
right
to
places.
Clinton. You
Yeah.
have to compare him to
Yeah.
Clinton and other people who've been brought up over time. And it's happened. You can go back to some of these other kind of 20th century people who brought up. And Nelson Rockefeller was always around. He was
Yeah.
always trying to, when he tried to run for president in 76,
Yeah, it was like two or
um,
three times, wasn't it?
yeah, he was definitely run. He was definitely their political. He could not pull off the popularity contest. Reagan was such a great politician and personality. He was good. He was well, good, spoke well, and was approachable.
Yeah.
And even Bush Senior tried to run for the president. He wasn't.
Yeah.
Anyway, when interesting thing, Bush is the Rockefeller family. The Bushes are the Eastern elite. They never talk about it. They are
Yeah.
brought up like under the Rockefeller. They wouldn't have
Yeah.
made anywhere where they'd come to without the overt and covert blessing of that family. And they did a lot when the banking crisis happened in 2007 and 8. A lot of banks got wiped out, but it wasn't Chase, which is known as the
Right.
David Rockefeller Bank. And all
Right.
of this stuff, like all the stuff that Bush did, benefited Chase. So, like Washington Mutual's gone and Bear Stearns is gone, but these other firms thrived because it was a banking war.
Yeah.
It wasn't a crisis for certain people. And I think that's the people, 99% of the people could never figure that out, that it's a crisis for everybody else. But this is how you wash out the competition, man. This freaking brilliant.
Yeah.
The Bushes are, I mean, the Bush and the Rockefellers are incredibly
That
skilled.
that
They pulled
reminds
off amazing stuff. What I was getting to the point of was that when Poppy Bush died, His son is there, who he knighted as the guy for the new millennium. And who else was there at his deathbed was Bill Clinton.
Oh, really? Huh.
Why? Why? He's not, he's supposed to be on the opposite side. He's supposed to be
Yeah.
the enemy. Because all that stuff that happened under Clinton was okayed with the big boys and the Eastern elite and all that stuff, like you said. The
Yeah.
WASPs, the kind of what they call them, the Brahmins. They really are a different class. I mean, we have an elite and we have an aristocracy in the United States.
Yeah, yeah, there's a caste system for sure. It's a little bit more covert, but it's not that hard to see
Bill
if you
Clinton
just
is a
open your
perfect
eyes.
example. The surface things are what people they want to see, not that
Yeah.
somebody's bringing him up. Somebody cleaned him up. He was a sexual predator,
Yeah.
and I've actually talked to what's her name? What's the woman from Arkansas he abused? But that's why they got him out of UK, is he was up to no good there.
Right.
So I mean, this guy should have washed out. He should have and any normal person without that's another indicator of something else. Somebody else is helping you out of your problems over and over and over again.
Right.
Because, and it's not, like I said, it's not a problem for him because he's above the law. So these other guys in the banking stuff, it's the same thing. Anyway,
Yeah.
the whole story, the backstory of Bill is baloney. It's provably baloney.
Wow.
He's
Because I was just
he's
reading through the Vince Foster thing, brushing up today, and it talked about Clinton living at his grandparents' house, a little rural, crappy house, and across the street was Vince Foster's big white brick house. But they made just even right there in the Wikipedia, they made a big point to like, present Clinton as this, dirt poor, Arkansas boy.
there's that was his mother's side. There's no question about it. But
Hmm.
there's something else going on with Bill. There's definitely. I mean, it's even his wife is kind of like his handler, Hillary, like the smarter, more ruthless one.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, and bringing it back to Vince Foster, I, I had no idea that she was part of the Rose law firm there
yeah, she
either.
was.
So I mean, he was
Hubble,
before she was.
Foster,
Yeah,
Clinton, Hillary.
yeah, um,
He made
yeah,
partner, by the way, just to let people know how smart he was. First in his class, and
right.
also made partner in 3 years at Rose Law Firm. Pretty
Yeah,
competitive environments.
they said that I mean, people were like, we never saw him lose. Like he just didn't lose. And it was meteoric as far as his
The
ability.
standard route for partnership in like American law firms was about 6 or 7 years. So they make you
Wow.
bust your ass. So how did he do it in 3? I mean,
Wow.
literally means he's sharing in the profits, right? He's not an
Yeah.
employee. He becomes a part owner.
Right.
So
Huh.
they saw something like they didn't want him to leave either because he probably brought in tons of clients and money. It's usually
Yeah.
based upon huge clients and a lot of money.
Yeah. Hmm.
So he's a remarkable guy. Like
Yeah.
he was self-made. There's no question. This is a self-made guy. Um,
You just had
but
the
yeah, I think he was too upstanding around other jackals who may not have been as as honest. Honestly, I think that's probably what happened.
mm,
So I mean, he was at war literally. The whole story of him being depressed, or the guy underwent incredible amounts of stress.
yeah.
Like all of
He
a
was
sudden,
a
like
top
yeah, like it's
lawyer,
like
and 6 months.
supposedly like all of a sudden he crumbles in Washington with some fake ass freaking suicide note too that's torn up
Oh, dude, I
that
read that
appears.
suicide
Yeah,
note.
yeah.
I, that they just somebody else, one of the other White House counsel finds in his briefcase,
Ding!
ripped
It just
up,
like shows up.
and the first
It
person that they take the handwriting to is like, no, this is a forgery, and it's by somebody who's not even that good at forging. And if you read the note, it is just a really nice way to just button up everything that
yeah.
he was like. I
Like I'm
mean,
gonna button up my own suicide. Like that's my
yeah,
instead of saying F Bill, he screwed me over, I made the wrong decision. F my family, F my parent, you know what I mean? Like some
Yeah.
gripes or something. Like we had this shooter today, like
Oh
griping
my
about
gosh.
everybody and all that stuff.
Did you
Like
see
that's
the
what
video?
no, I haven't
Oh
seen
man,
it.
there's it uploaded Facebook. Oh, I wanted to talk to you about this. It blew me away today. Um, the guy, I actually screen recorded it because Lord knows it'll probably get taken down, but shortly before or during, I don't know when it got uploaded to his social media, was a video of him going through all of his clips
Oh,
and
right, right. Yeah. I saw
I
that.
mean all the guns, but he had written in white paint pen on all of the weapons and all of the clips and whatnot. And I started like I saw a bunch of Russian writing on them, like because some of it just says dumb stuff like "Where's your God?"
Cyrillic.
and
Yeah.
like, but yeah, there was Russian writing, and then I saw a hail and somebody's last name, and I looked it up, and it was that Norwegian dude who killed 77 kids. And then he also on his gun he had Randy Weaver written on the pistol, and I mean it's covered, and I taped it or I recorded it so I could go back and read what he had on there. But it when I looked up the Norwegian guy, that guy was this. He was like a neo not. I don't know. This kid being a transgender who is writing hail this guy who was like this Norwegian neo-Nazi. It smacked of '09A stuff to me, and I was like, man, I gotta tell William Ramsey about this because
Apparently on his Facebook page, he did have the Order of Nine Angles kind of symbol. So
really.
whether it's real or not, yeah. So you have to kind of, you have to let the
I
dust
thought
settle.
that
But
that video though, because it's clearly him, was really telling because it seemed different than other shootings. You know what I mean? The fact that it was a Catholic church, like that rarely happens. And then this mix of like this kind of transgender, pagan, neo-Nazi like mashup. I was like, man, this is weird. Um, but anyway, take that
he
for
had
what
his
what it is.
references. That symbol was Cremo's that little square thing was Cremo. He had the smiley face. So he's got all of the kind of symbology and references for mass shooters
Yeah,
and kind of the underground zeitgeist, so to speak.
yeah,
So, and those things,
strange.
yeah, all those. I mean, he had the weaponry to kill a lot more people.
Yeah, I mean yeah, I'm not sure what the final count was. I mean
I
they
thought
were
it
saying
was two. Was that's what
yeah,
was
that's what I saw was two, but 17
two people
people
killed.
injured. Like apparently he sprayed and prayed. I guess I don't know. It was my wife is a started her first year teaching at a Catholic school that only goes to eighth grade. Both of my kids go to that school, and they go to mass on Wednesdays. So when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, this is really close to home. We're not Catholic, but it's the best school we can get them to. So anyway, I'm gonna let you. I keep interrupting you. Go back on Vince Foster, man. Have at it, because so he
Well, I
commits
think it.
suicide in the
How did
park, and I know that you have information and you've distilled that.
For people who don't know, Fort Marcy Park is it's an expressway into DC. So it literally goes up the Potomac. So the Potomac comes down, then there's Georgetown, then there's DC. But up to Potomac is Fort Marcy Park. It's called Fort Marcy Park because it was an old Civil War fort. And if you look at the old Civil War, and you see pictures of the forts they used to make back then, it wasn't like a castle somewhere, but these forts were typically made by berms and
Earthworks.
earthworks with a
Yep.
lot of whole tree stumps and logs and things like that. And it wasn't a small place at all. And it was rumored to be a cruising thing for dudes too, which
Really?
kind of adds a little bit of a different element to the whole story once you kind of know the story. But um, he didn't supposedly walk in. He was found like 700 feet into the park, and he was on a back berm.
Mm,
And I did walk. I lived by there, so it wasn't like hard for me to get to Fort Marcy. And I walked to the spot where he found his body, and the first word that popped into my mouth was, "Nope, there's no way," because
yeah.
it is so strange. He's almost like hidden back there, and he was found at a weird slope. The blood spatter wasn't consistent with gravity. His gun was in his hand, which is actually fairly rare.
Right.
Most suicides, the gun is not in your hand, like about 75%, 80%. So that was weird. It was also kind of a fake gun. The FBI report that was later found said that the bullet, the wound, it wasn't they said that they searched
They
for a
kept saying there
bullet.
was no exit wound, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it was like a pro hit, like a 22 or something like that.
Right.
But they,
But it was a 38 they found on him, right?
yeah, it was something that
Yeah.
wasn't consistent with the damage. And then there was rumors of another entrance room wound. They searched the park for the bullet that he supposedly used. They couldn't find it. They found Civil War stuff and bullets
Mm,
and musket balls and all that stuff. But it was like, sold as he was depressed and he had to go. He went and offed himself, and it kind of was strange from the very beginning because people were like, "What?" And then they instead of the FBI initially investigating, they had the park police investigating,
right.
and you can tell, like, for in my opinion, the FBI covered it up from the very beginning and covered up the whole story and the background, and he had rug fibers on his body. And there was a congressman at the time whose name I can't remember all the time, but he was a Republican. He's like, this guy had a blonde haired woman's hair on his body and semen in his pants. What was he doing? Like he was always doing,
Right.
like, why would he doing that? Well, the reason is, and the rumor is in DC, and this is a known fact, is that these guys would work in DC. A lot of these people aren't even from the area. They're
Yeah.
from Arkansas or California. And what these guys would do is that, they rent an apartment, but they would pile in with their other buddies, whether they were people working for congressmen, and they would rent a another apartment where they could go and drink and bring their secretaries
Mm,
and kind of hang out away from anybody. And so it's rumored that that's what Vince Foster got. He was taken, he was kind of honeypotted and taken to be with somebody, and that was how that was the place where it happened, rumored to have happened, and that he was
right.
rolled up in a rug. And there was a way to get to the back of the park. There was kind of a service road, so you didn't have to go through the front of the park. You could come around the back and drive up.
Mm,
And he was missing for 5 hours. So it's the whole story. I mean, it just went on and on. There were like 5 investigations. They left out
right.
information in the investigations, but they were supposed to like wrap it up. Then Starr kind of did a report. The FBI. I mean, it just didn't make sense. They it was part of like the Starr report because they were trying to figure out the whole Lewinsky thing. And so there was
Right.
one filing known as the Clark Addendum, and that was John Clark who represented Patrick Knowlton, who was in the park and saw just suspicious stuff. And then the FBI, the real suspicious thing
Right.
is
Did
is
they
the
like followed him and like
yeah, they followed him.
terrorize him for months or something like that?
No question. There
Yeah.
absolutely no question. There were pictures that they had of these guys. I mean, this is the DC treatment. A lot of people wouldn't believe this, but if you're not on board, they can intimidate you, and that's what they did to Knowlton. They actually like took pictures of him with, I mean, back in the day, you'd have these long zoom camera. It was like a
Yeah.
spy movie. Dudes would come by him and they all had black briefcases, intimidate him, try to change his story, and
And he
they
was
have
just
they had
he had
pictures
been
of it.
in and he had just been in the park. And I think he
He
noticed
said
like
he
a
went into the
car
park
or
to take a
something.
piss, to take a leak. Yeah.
Right.
I worked for John Clark, so I worked for his attorney. So I knew all this stuff. I was there.
Oh
I used to
wow.
be in John Clark's apartment. I've sat down with Patrick Knowlton. Like
Oh
I knew the
wow.
guy. I knew the guy. He's passed away now, but Clark is still around. I interviewed Clark for my podcast, so you can
I
hear me
think I might
talk with
have
him.
I think that's
Yeah.
where I heard the information about the FBI
Clark did,
kind
yeah,
of
Clark did excellent work
harassment.
for TWA 800 as well. So, like, these are also things that, there was a missile that went up and blew that plane up. They decided to cover up that too. Who did the cover up? The FBI. So, your like law enforcement agencies aren't really that law enforcement. They're not this dispassionate people trying to pursue justice and the truth. And that's
Yeah.
definitely the case, in my opinion. In Vince Foster, it's been over 30 years.
Now it's been a long time. What was what is the impetus to off v- Vince Foster? Is it just that I mean,
He
is there
knew
some
too
sort?
much. Like I said, going back into Arkansas, and
Yeah,
I think Whitewater's just a small part of it. They didn't the guys in Arkansas had to kind of laugh at the investigators because they never keyed into the real thing, which is the drug running and the
right,
massive amount of hundreds of millions of dollars that needed to be washed and laundered. Like you can just look at Barry Seal, his CIA agent, according to Daniel Hopsicker, Barry Adler Seal, who was eventually murdered,
right.
like he was going to a place. I mean,
Sabotage this plane or
yeah, I
something,
mean,
right?
no, he was shot by like hitmen from South
Oh,
America.
oh,
Um,
who is the plane that it was another Clinton guy that was like on his way to like testify or something like that or give a statement and the plane
I
went
mean, there's a
down.
bunch of cops that died, a lot of people who were in that environment who knew of the stuff. There's the boys on the tracks, that's famous. There's a list. There were women who died. I mean, it was rough. It was very frontier town type stuff that was going on in Arkansas. And I think he knew a lot of that stuff. And he might have done something stupid like Robert Maxwell did, which is if you don't do what I tell you, I'm going to talk. And then
Yeah,
that's apparently what Robert Maxwell did to his buddies in Intel and says, I know all this stuff. If you don't, blah, 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 or help me out or dig me out of he was in real debt. And Maxwell was. So that's the rumor. Is that what's triggered? He was a
yeah,
loyalist. He was a great spy. He was a great friend of Israel. But
yeah,
it might have turned on him and they're like, well, this is an operation and you got to go. And so Vince Foster, I think something like that happened. He might have said the word. He might not have known what he said was the wrong thing, but he said, yeah, I've got
yeah,
this information on you guys. And a lot of those people, I mean, that's kind of their currency is like blackmailing each other, right? So if you're both blackmailed, if you're in the Epstein thing and you're raping kids, you're all blackmailed together. So you're not going to talk together usually.
right.
And so I think that's what happened with Foster is that he was neck deep in some of that stuff, not as dark as some of the other people, but he said, I'll really talk, about this. And they're like, dude, I have a career. And he might have risked Hillary's career, which would have been the real
Yeah,
game at her because she was in the wings. She was always ambitious. She almost had that
yeah,
kind of demonic possessed ambition to be president, much like LBJ. Like this is
yeah.
their lifelong goal. This is what their meaning of life. So
The
anything
Bushes,
that
LBJ, Hillary Clinton. Yeah, it's any
so he
means
gets in the
necessary.
way, and it's like that's a trigger. So the philosophy, psychology of power, the hyper ambition, the mob, like the mob background. She probably has a mob background, like she's from much like Pelosi. They have, I mean, her dad is a mobster. So these people have mob backgrounds. So the sensibility is different. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
That's an option where it's not to anybody else, you know. Um, I've been this is kind of off topic, but I've been listening. You've been going back and forth a lot with like the Hinkley and the Catcher in the Rye stuff lately. And when you were talking earlier about the Bushes and the Rockefellers, and their close ties and whatnot, it reminded me that um, Hinckley was in my hometown of Williamsburg. I actually have been inside his parents' house. I know they started off in Texas, but I just find it interesting because you've got a real huge tie in Williamsburg to the Rockefellers because they came in the 1920s after Marie Bauer Hall published her book about the secret hidden vault in colonial Williamsburg, which was just a rundown nothing town at the time. But they swooped in the 1920s and bought out the whole town, kicked everybody out of their houses, and then turned it into a living museum. And so they
Interesting.
still have a Rockefeller Foundation lawyer who lives on site in Williamsburg at all times. Of course, you've got Camp Perry, the CIA base right there, and then you've got the Bush's involvement there, and then you have the Hinkley's home um, right there, and we know that Brother Bush was eating dinner with the Hinkleys when that went down, and I find it's interesting, another Williamsburg connection, you know. But they lived there forever. I'm guessing that they moved there because their son was being held in Eastern State Hospital, which is also right there in Williamsburg. Um, but yeah, I found that interesting with that connection between the Bushes and the Rockefellers there. Yeah,
And the Hinkleys.
and the Hinkleys.
So, who was the chief beneficiary if Reagan died?
Bush, and we know that I mean, there's strong evidence to point towards some sort of involvement years earlier with another assassination. It's yeah, it's weird, man. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to like get into with Vince Foster or anything
There's just
else
a
you
lot
want?
more to that story. There's a lot of
Yeah.
details. There's a lot of writing. I recommend people find the Clark Addendum. The very aspect. What's interesting about the Clark Addendum, Starr, by the way, went on to represent Epstein. But Starr was an independent counsel,
Wow.
and the writer, the chief research writer, was the guy who's on the Supreme Court now, right? Kavanaugh. And so he was the real research guy. And they researched a lot about Bill's sexual habits. It reads very graphically, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, it's really bad. I'm going to repost some of the stuff, but
Yeah.
they never mentioned it in the news. But
Right.
what happened is that the Starr report was going to be verified by the federal judiciary in D.C. It's a three-man court, the District Court of District of Columbia. And there was a petition, I think John Clark sent it, to have his addendum, a 20-page addendum that kind of disputed the Starr report and included in the final version. And it was accepted by these three judges. You can John Clark's website's still available, so you can go check it out. It didn't meet the media. It just shows this cartel, this ownership of the media, and all the assets are all
Yeah.
kind of fixed together. But the this Starr report and the Clark addendum is very important because it shows that the judges themselves objectively had suspicions about everything. And people, and if you talk to people on the street who are even moderately informed, nobody believes Vince Foster went to that park and killed himself there, of all places. I mean, he had an enviable position at the White House. Like, that's a
Yeah.
great job. Like, you can take all those connections. This is like a stepping stone to even greater magnification for your own personal power and money because you're making these connections with wealthy people. That's what happens, this revolving door is
Yeah.
people go work there and then they go to law firms and they have the same clients because they're buddies. They're hanging out. They went to the inauguration together. They
Right.
did all these work things together, and now they're like representing,
Yeah, it's a
huge multi-billion.
retirement plan,
Yeah.
and you're in there
Oh, he
with
was set.
your
He
your
was set to make
oldest
millions of
friend.
dollars. Yeah, he was set to make millions of dollars per year after he got done with that job. Because these guys have money like crazy, and he had entree accessibility to all these people who are still in power today in the Democratic establishment. So like for him to like suddenly like conk out after having a very high stress career and academic career and
Yeah.
and becoming a partner, it's strange credulity that he would crack right at that time. So
Yeah, that makes no sense.
no, but dude, I
Um,
mean, if once he got into the White House, the average person gets in there, they go, "I'm set.
yeah,
I'm
I'm
going to
good.
make connections. I'm going to do parties. Everything's expensed. Like you can have like
Right.
almost like a king, like king level dining and eating and celebrities and whatever. You just do. I mean, it's a center of international power. And that's really the problem, is that there's so much power at stake that somebody who wants to trouble the apple cart is, those are dangerous people. You keep your freaking mouth shut in DC.
Yeah.
You
I was gonna ask when you were in DC and after this happened, being around that kind of milieu, what was what was kind of the consensus, like, talked about? Was was
mass,
everybody kind of on the same page, like, oh crap, he must.
massive amounts of corruption.
Yeah,
Everybody knew what was going on. A lot
really.
of underground kind of sexual things going on too that never get reported. Um, I was just a low life guy. I was not Bill Clinton. I actually
Well,
kind of got into law school on merit. Um, but the it was super corrupt, and there are other dead bodies. Well, I was there from 95 to 98. We used to joke about it because people would like fall out of buildings, jump off their windows, found dead in the water. I mean, people die a lot and it doesn't get reported. So some of these low level people, they're off, and you just don't. There was a one girl who died, and like she was banging her congressman. Forgot her name now, but she was found in like, another place, and there's whole stories, and they investigated and they found the bodily fluids of seven men at the dude's house. Like, so something was going on there that you
wow.
wouldn't ever want to discuss. And so these things happen. Like, there's a lot of blackmail, there's a lot of powerful people. Like, I spent time in Georgetown with some very notable figures as just an outsider. I had friends who worked for Soros. I was really
Really,
there. I shook Bill Clinton's hand twice. Like, I went to the inauguration in 96. And
really.
so yeah, yeah, it was really something else. The
That's wild, man.
Yeah, yeah, no, I stepped on Evander Holyfield's toe. Like, I turned around, and I just really he was the nicest guy. I said, man, I'm
He
really
was at one of
sorry.
my high school track meets. I didn't run track, but after wrestling practice, I
He should have
walked
punched me.
on
He should have
track.
punched me, but he was very nice. I was just like, I'm so sorry. I just do. And it's very memorable. He's like, so he
Yeah,
became my kind of my favorite boxer. But I would, so I was in the kind of environment,
yeah,
and but didn't understand. I'm from Nebraska. I didn't know a lot of the kind of dark world stuff. I didn't really
yeah.
get it. A lot of these guys are connected to some pretty shady stuff. There was a guy from Oregon. My wife worked for a congressman, and they said, they like, here, take this to Joe's office. And I'm like, okay. Oh, I didn't know what was going on. And so I just walked over, and I'm like, hey, here's these documents. Bob wanted you to have, Congressman Bob wanted you to have them. And he's like, oh, okay. And then I left. And then I found on the news that this guy was like a rapacious octopus. Like, any woman who'd come in, he tried to like
Really?
really, yeah, like really bad, like really try to grope them and touch them and do naughty things. And then he got kicked out because he got busted once, but he was like doing that to all of the girls. There's a lot of girls at that time. Like, probably those offices are half women. So,
Yeah.
also I worked at a restaurant south of uh, south of the capital, and so I would see some of these guys in their natural state, like, and there was like, it's being exposed where the journalists are with the congressmen or the powerful people or the chiefs of staff. I'd seen them together. I'm like, these guys aren't objective at all. Like,
Yeah, no
they're on
kidding.
TV talking about their
Having
friends.
drinks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I remember his name was Tony Snow, and here he is with all these congressmen joking around, and they're probably buying him lunch. And I'm like, this isn't right. Like, you should be objective and not be hanging out with these guys.
Yeah, no
And there was a
kidding.
guy who came in, like, when I would work lunches, and I'm like, he would come in and he would order like a big glass, like fin two fingers of scotch. And then he's coming off of last night's hangover, so
Right.
he's really nervous. Like, they have that kind of look, like, and he's starting to put the alcohol back into his body, and his nose had like giant beads of sweat on it. And I'm like, and somebody's like, that dude's a congressman from Florida. I was like, what? He's wasted. This is new. What the hell's going on? And so we found out his name. He was from Central Florida. And you'd see all these like, publications. This guy looks like a suit and tie,
Right.
looking good. And like I'm like, this guy needs a freaking rehab facility. Like he's
Yeah,
in
once he
really
got
bad
rid of those
shape.
shakes, he was floating the rest of the
I
day.
bet, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was almost like a scene from Barfly, like
Yeah.
Bukowski level type stuff.
Yeah.
And so like you kind of see that and you're like, the behind the scenes is really a lot different. Like there's a lot of
What
different
made you
stuff.
end up leaving kind of the Virginia DC? Just
This
curious
kind of
for my
stuff, the
own.
corruption and
Yeah,
the
that's
murders, and
kind of
like
what
I
I
was like,
thought.
is this where I want to be for the rest of my life? I mean, some people kind of can adapt to that. They will adapt to it, and they'll keep their mouth shut. And so for them, that's their decision. I think it was also, I was from the West Coast, so people in the West Coast kind of idealize or want to see what the East Coast is like, and maybe it's the other way around too. Is East Coasters
Yeah.
want to see what like the West? So
Yeah, I have a real close friend of mine. She went to UVA and then went to William and Mary Law School and was
that's a really good school.
and well, and I'll tell you what, watch a couple of my William and Mary episodes. It is weird that that campus and that whole the whole history behind William and Mary is very very strange, and then the Rockefellers come in the 20s and just make it all the stranger. But yeah,
They make
she
everything strange, whatever they touch.
dude,
It's a
you know where
common trait.
they were at just before they or where they left from to come over and take over Williamsburg in the 20s? They were at Stratford upon Avon doing the same thing that they did. Yeah, and it's just really interesting and coincidental. It's not, but
The
that
father of the rid of John D, the original
yeah.
founder, was very strange. He
Yeah,
was
and
like literally a snake oil salesman.
he was a charlatan. He got in all kinds of like hot water. He reminds me of the family of reading about him reminds me of the family of Joseph Smith. It's kind of like the same kind of deal. They just faked it until they made it by any means necessary. I put the Rockefellers as far as especially East Coast, but as far as you dig far enough into any kind of conspiracy, you end up with a Rockefeller. I mean, you end up with them being behind prohibition, and dumping all the money into the temperance movement so that they could really what it looks like is that they were trying to they didn't care at all about people drinking alcohol. They'd never supported the temperance movement or anything like that beforehand, but once all these farmers started realizing that they could use the byproduct and waste from their farms to run their these newfangled, motorized tractors and stuff, they could create their own fuel, basically moonshine, um, to run their tractors. Who's that going to hit? It's going to hit the Rockefellers because they're the petroleum family. You know what I mean? At the exact same time they were doing that, they also were behind, the standardizing of modern medicine, which they they helped outlaw herb doctors and homeopaths and pushed everything through Johns Hopkins, pushed everything towards this petroleum based pharmaceuticals, which also benefits them. And then at the same time, they were involved in textbook manufacturing and then creating curriculum and at the same time rewriting and steering the history of the United States with things like their big the Rockefeller Foundation's history stuff. Your Williamsburg. I mean, Williamsburg is one of the most historic places in the whole country, and you can't do a archaeological dig anywhere near there without the express written consent of the Rockefeller Foundation. So they kind of, it's the Disneyland of history now. It's It's
I'm not
it's
surprised. The amount of cultural impact they've
hmm
had would shock the conscience. And I think they've
they
supported a lot of arts. They've
hmm
supported Kinsey. They supported a lot of stuff that you may not know. Cultural Cold War. But really the family kind of like I talked about the brothers, but Lawrence Rockefeller was really involved in a lot of counterculture, new age
really.
stuff, all over the place. UFO research. There's pictures of
Oh
him with
yes,
John Mack. There's
yeah,
pictures
yeah.
of him.
He's the UFO Rockefeller.
Right, yeah.
That's kind of my
Esalen, it just goes on and on. There's pictures of him with Hillary Clinton. They're friends.
yeah. I think
Um,
they've got a very occulted background. I think all of these, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers. I think you dig deep.
Bushes for sure.
Yeah, and you find they are students of the mysteries, as it were,
Right.
and um,
I
it's
talked to a guy who wrote a book about the Rockefellers, the Curcios. He said at one of their mansions in New York City, they had kind of like an occulted room with
oh,
kind of like
all of the.
statuaries and all kinds of that
Have you
stuff.
ever seen the weird room in the Biltmore?
No,
There's a
can you send
room.
that to me? Can you send me that?
Yeah, I can.
Send me a picture.
It's it's really strange. It's like this octagon shaped room down in the basement that is like it's terrifying.
There you
Um,
go.
and it's just
The
I heard
octagon is
some.
key, man.
Yeah, well,
It's in so many different places. It like
oh dude.
reflects the Star of Ishtar and all this stuff. These guys
Oh,
are into that stuff.
so Court Lindahl, that's the octagonal structures. That's a big thing with him. And you look at Thomas Jefferson, a uh, another Virginia boy. He's got the octagonal structures at Monticello. You've got the octagonal powder magazine right there in William and Mary, or in Colonial Williamsburg, where I currently live near Petersburg, Virginia. That's the Williamsburg that time forgot, and they never did any renovation there, and it all the history and the weirdness just stayed there and just has slowly crumbled. But that whole downtown of that place is connected by octagonal structures. One of
Wow.
them, in particular, was built after the Civil War by the Bowling family, and it was put into a trust by the Bowling family, and the trust is given to the city to where it can never be removed. It's this big octagonal building that was used as like a market, but it just happens to be exactly 1,000 feet from the first backlit clock faced court. It's the court, the old colonial courthouse, and Lady Justice sits on top of an octagonal pedestal. And then 1,000 miles from that is a octagonal pedestal that holds this strange um it's like a big rock with an indention in it, and they call it the Pocahontas Basin. And they say that Pocahontas did some sort of coming of age ritual or something was done there, and that's laid on an octagonal structure exact in a northerly line. You go from and the Bowlings actually come from Pocahontas. Like that's the family that comes from John Rolfe. And anyway, I'm getting off the point here, but is there anything else you wanted to get into, man? I can't thank you enough for coming on here and giving us some of your time, dude. I was listening to you today while I was at work. If you ever happen to,
Other people can listen too. It's William Ramsey
yes,
Investigates. I've
sir.
got 1,500 episodes. I have 5 documentaries on my Patreon. I've got 5 books on Amazon, so you can read and watch a lot of stuff. I recommend listening to Dave Martin on my podcast because he wrote the book about that. Also, there's another book that was called Hillary and Vince, I think it was called, to another author whose name I can't remember right now, but I
Hillary
think
and Vince.
yeah, I
Oh
think
wow.
that's what it is. Let me see if I can find it. That I think he lives close to you. I think he's in Chattanooga.
Okay.
I don't know how far away that is.
I'm
Hillary
actually
invents
headed.
a story of love, death, and cover up. Author's Dean Arnold.
Oh wow. Yeah,
Mm.
we'll check that out. So it's William Ramsey Investigates everywhere you get podcasts. You've written books, documentaries on Crowley. You're at the tip of the spear as far as the research into smiley face killer and or killers and the Order of the Nine Angles. Um,
It's
but
not ending. Like it's
y-
bad.
yeah,
I've
it's
covered stuff recently on Manchurian Candidate, Knights of Malta,
yeah,
Catcher in the Rye, I think you mentioned,
yeah,
Pilgrim Society, some of these other kind of big elite organizations that these guys are involved in. That's how they fix things and do private diplomacy as
yeah.
opposed to as opposed to public diplomacy.
Well, William, I can't thank you enough, man. Thanks for giving us some of your time.
Yep,
If you
you
ever
bet.
think of any Virginia conspiracies that you remember, give me a holler. And anytime you want to come on, we'd love to have you. And I'll bother you every now and again. But
Sounds good.
thanks for doing what you do. Uh,
Thanks for
keep the
having me.
faith, brother. Thank you, man.
Likewise, likewise.
All right.
Peace.